Should I hold CJ Stroud or sell him ASAP? What's the best way to maximize profits on vintage cards of great players? Ernie Banks, Bob Clemente, Willie Mays, but card condition is subpar. Is it worth grading? What is up, everybody? We are here for episode number 41 of Beyond the Game, where I answer all sorts of questions, sports card questions, talk about my life, talk about things going on, and I have my nice little iPad here where I draw everything out for you. If you don't know who I am, hi, my name is Eric Michael. I've sold millions of dollars in sports cards pretty successfully, and I make these podcasts to get people into the world of sports cards because I truly do think it is the best way to make a side income on top of your job. But nevertheless, we got like 6 or 7 questions here, and then also I have a bunch of stuff to just go over, some stuff that happened this weekend, some stuff from the sports card world. I actually went to the Dallas Card Show for one day on Thursday, which was all right, but I'm going to go into that, what I thought of it, etc. But let's head right into it. So I like to start these podcasts off with doing these questions. So Corey says, is there value in base cards? What is the best thing to do with them? So usually not. There's not much value in base cards, unfortunately. I mean, they're worth 10 cents, 20 cents, 30 cents, and you probably have globs of them and have no idea what to do with them. But the only thing that I know to do with base cards, and this also goes for like junk cards in the 80s and the 90s, is piecing them together in like a strategic way and selling them. This is not going to make you a lot of money, okay? So, like, just to keep that in mind. But, like, what I would do is, so let's say you have a bunch of base cards and you're desperate for money. I would piece them out. So, like, step number 1, piece out by team. So I would put all the Mets players and the Yankee players and the Cubs players or the Jets players and the Giants players, whatever, and put them all in sets. Then number 2, what I would do is list each set on eBay. So what this would look like is, like you'd make a post, 1,000 plus New York Mets cards from the 80s to the 2000. From the 80s to 2020, for example. It would look something like that. And you would price it, assuming these are just base cards and they're pretty worthless, price it at, I don't know, you could price it at like 50 to 100. Honestly, probably if it was me, I would just run it as an auction. And then number 4, make sure you charge for shipping, okay? Because these cards, it's probably going to cost you a decent amount to ship. So it's sloppy handwriting, charge for shipping, because I see people all the time. They're like, Eric, I sold these cards for $6, but shipping cost me $20. I'm like, well, you got to charge for shipping. And you're just selling these cards to collectors, people that just love the Mets, love the Yankees, love whatever team they're buying. That's really the best thing to do with them. It's not going to make you a lot of money. It's going to take you a lot of time. So this is more for if you're broke, go for it, or if you don't have a ton of money. But what I tell people is if you don't have a ton of money, then you probably shouldn't be watching this, and you probably shouldn't be buying and selling sports cards to begin with, to be honest with you. But hopefully that answers your question, Corey. This is a good question. This is a loaded question. Chris says or asks, should you only buy graded cards to eliminate the grading cost of raw cards and the uncertainty associated with them? So yes, there's uncertainty with them, but the straightforward answer to your question is no, okay? Let me explain. So let's put a little line here, all right? And let's put on this side raw. Raw is another word for not graded. And let's put on this side, let's do a different color, let's do black, for graded, okay? Let me draw this out for a second. So for raw, the general way it works, right? You buy a card. And then number 2, you send for grading. I like these colors. And then grading cost, the cost to grade, it's going to be roughly about $19. It depends on the service you use. There's, services that are $40, $50, $100, $200 if the card's more expensive, but that's how much the grading cost is going to be. Number 4, if you're decent, I could speak for like myself and my students, about 60 to 70% of cards will get a PSA 10 if you're decent and know what you're doing. then step number 5, so a PSA 10. So on average, you'll about 2x your money. And if it gets a PSA 9, this is a negative, you'll lose about negative 10%, right? So that's basically how grading sports cards works. And, right, all you're doing at the end of the day is you're flipping a coin, and when it lands on heads, you're doubling your money. When it lands on tails, you're losing a little bit of money. And if you keep playing that game over and over again, well, guess what? You're probably going to make a good amount of money, right? But obviously there's more that goes into it, like timing, knowing what cards to buy, being able to evaluate the condition, all that stuff. But once you get it down, it simply becomes a math game. Like, that's all business is. Basically, the way business goes is, and this is for any business, whether it's real estate, stocks, what I do with teaching people how to make money with sports cards. In the beginning, you're going to suck, and you're probably going to lose money or not make a lot of money. And then once you figure it out, it's simply a math game because you have all the knowledge. So your inputs are X and your outputs are 2X. So, for example, to use an example away from sports cards, for Major League profits, we barely made any money for 3 years because during those 3 years, we're learning our market, we're learning how to properly run ads and train a sales team and really get people to be successful and get referrals and all that stuff. So we're barely making any money. And then once we figured it out, well, now we get a positive return on our ad spend. So now it's just more of a game of, can we hire correctly? Can we spend more money on ads? And when we spend more money on ads, we make more money as long as we have the proper team in place. And that's all sports cards is. So like for the first few years, I barely made any money with sports cards. I would make money, lose money, and make a little bit. But once I figured everything out, and then it was just a game of how do I scale this? How do I get a card finder, which is something I developed, that someone that buys cards for me. How do I just buy more cards at the right price, at the right time, in the right condition? Because I knew how to look at those things. And now it's just a game of sending cards to PSA. How many cards can I send to PSA? So business is a game. If you're gonna suck to learn all the information. You might make money, you might lose money, and then once you don't suck anymore, it simply becomes a math game. So that's really what raw cards are. It's a math game. Now, buying graded cards is a little bit different. So the way buying graded cards works, let me put this in black so we can separate this. So number one, you buy high-end graded cards in off-season, okay? Now, this is the way I make money with graded cards. There's a bunch of other ways to do it, but this is like the most systematic way that I know how to do it, and I've done it for a long time. So you buy high-end graded cards in the offseason. When I say high-end graded cards, I'm talking about cards that are probably $1,000 or $2,000 plus. Step number 2, hold for a few months. So, for example, baseball you might want to buy in November and December it's low, and in the offseason, and sell it in February, March. Well, I'm speaking right now. I think someone that's a good purchase is, let's just look right here. So, I think someone that's a good purchase, in my opinion, is like CJ Stroud, right? Because he just lost. I just think he's a solid purchase. I think they're going to have a lot of hype. And, right, CJ Stroud cards, if you look here, in the past 180 days, right, whoop-de-doo, it's come down, right? You could buy this card for like $350 now. And at one point, this card was almost $1,000. And then hopefully it'll jump up 10 to 20%. So that's step number 3. So step number 3, hopefully the value appreciates. What you want to aim for is 20 to 30%, and you sell it, and you make money. Now, if you're good, honestly, this last part, you could do better than 20 to 30%. I'm being conservative here. But on this right-hand side, the graded side, it's probably, I don't know if it's safer. Like, this is what you do when you have an excess amount of money. Because on the raw side of things, there's only so much you could actually, Mike, I see your question. Give me 1 second. There's only so much you can actually, so many cards you can actually find raw in good condition. And there's kind of a cap to it. But on the graded side, because you could buy cards for $3, $5, $7, $10 it's not hard to find these cards that are low in the offseason and then just sell them and make money. So that's kind of like unlimited spending. So I would say once you're making like on the raw side, making $7 to $10 a month is probably the most you can consistently make from grading cards. And then once you have an excess amount of cash, it's I have $40,000, $50,000 extra in the bank. It's instead of it just sitting there, let me put it into the graded side of things and make more passive money. I don't like to use the word passive money, but it's more passive. Hopefully that makes sense. Someone asked, Mike says, what's the best way to maximize profits on vintage cards of great players? Ernie Banks, Bob Clemente, Willie Mays, but card condition is subpar. Is it worth grading? So buying vintage cards and getting them graded, it's hit or miss, man. It's not going to be consistent. Finding these cards is going to be all up in the air. Like buying raw cards and getting them graded is a lot more systematic, and you could do it every single day, as opposed to vintage cards just hit it. Like you can get lucky and like find a bunch and make a lot of money, but no problem, NYC. But the way I know how to make money with vintage cards, it's really only one way, to be honest. Like that's consistent. Like anyone could fucking find a card and get lucky for cheap and just flip it. That's not what I'm talking about. I try to teach like things that are systematic, predictable, and you could do them over and over again. Like finding a 1933 Gaudy Babe Ruth at 80% of comps. Could it happen? Sure, if had it happened to me. But it's not going to happen much. But this is the way I do it. So I don't buy much vintage cards. I know how to make money with them, but my time is capped. So I just try to focus on like high-end modern. So I don't do this much. But what I do teach inside of my program, so like this is a good example. This is the last vintage card I bought. This card actually has went up a lot in value. Jesus. All right. So check this out. So I'm sharing my screen here. Sorry for you guys on Instagram. You can't see it right now. But this card of Randy Moss, this is the 1998 Topps Chrome PSA 10. That's what this is. It's his like base rookie card. Randy Moss, great player, Hall of Famer. Everybody knows who he is. Now, check this out. So this card, you could see in like July and August, it was like 150, 160. And look what happened right here. Right here, this card dipped to like 117, okay? Why? I don't know. That's just how cards work. They go up and down. Now, the way vintage cards works, if we go back here, so like, let me put this in like good color. All right, vintage cards. And when I'm using the word vintage cards, for the most part, I'm talking about PSA 10s from the 80s to the 90s, okay? That's really what I'm talking about for the most part. This is sloppy. This is going to bother me. Hold on. This is going to bother me. I have an OCD with this iPad sometimes. So what I'm talking about here, just to make it very clear, I'm talking about vintage cards. And when I'm using the word vintage cards, I'm talking about cards from the 80s to the 90s that are 10s, okay? So these are PSA 10s from the 80s to the 90s. Because once you start buying cards from the 40s and the 50s and the 60s, it's not as straightforward, because you could have a PSA 5, 1955 Sandy Koufax, and one could sell for $500, or one could sell for $2,000, the other could sell for $2,800, because the look of the card matters. Like, people look beyond the grade. Like with modern cards, it's just like, okay, is it a PSA 10? If it's a PSA 10, it's going to sell for around this. But with modern or vintage cards, it's not exactly how it works, because you could have a PSA 5 that looks shitty and the coloring is not as good, and you could have one that has much better coloring and centering, and it's going to sell for more. People with vintage cards are like nitpicky like that. So and you can make money with it. It just adds like another variable that I don't want to deal with. So when I buy vintage cards, I'm talking about like 80s and 90s for the most part. And so going back to this example, let's use that 1998 Topps Chrome Randy Moss that I was just showing here for a second. So basically, the way that, if this is a graph, right? This is a graph, and let's say this is this is the date. So this is like January. This is like December, and this is on this side is money, right? Money. That's a money symbol. So the way it works is this card only goes up over time. But it goes like this, right? It's like up and down and up and down and up and down. You can see it only goes up over time, but it goes up like this, right? So what you could do is, if you know this card is for the most part only going to go up in value, right? And you know it's going up and down like this, well, why wouldn't I just buy it right here or right here or right here while it dips, and then just sell it when it hits here or it hits here? Because all the data, right? Like this card of Randy Moss, if we go back to it, if we go back to the past 365 days, you can see it's going up in value over time, but it's just going like this, right? So this specific card, I bought this card at a card show, and it's actually somewhere in a YouTube video of mine. You can see me buying it. I bought it at some random card show in Tampa. But I saw this comp of 117, and I was like, well, this is a low comp, and I could use this to my advantage. And I ended up paying $110 for the card. I actually still have it. I should have sold it when it hit like up here, like probably like 180. But now this card's worth 220. Okay? All I did, I'm not smarter than anybody. All I did was I just bought it at one of these green circles here, and I just knew it was going to go up. Like, maybe it would go up next week. Maybe it would take a month. Maybe it would take 6 months. Who knows? But it's only going to go up in value, a card of Randy Moss, over time, right? For the most part. Obviously, there's exceptions, and things happen. Vintage players go down, but long story short, all I'm doing is just buying it low. That's all I'm doing. I'm just buying it when I see a low comp. That's it. And if you don't know what comp means, comp is just another word for like recent sale. Hopefully that answers your question. That was Jerry who answered that question. Yes, that was Jerry. So hopefully that answers your question. And then also you asked me the best way to sell those cards. Coach, I see your question. Give me a second. The best way to sell those cards, I mean, those cards are so easy to sell. Like my personal best and most favorite, if that's English, way to sell sports cards is through Facebook groups because there's no fees and you can build connections. Also, card shows I like. eBay I don't use as much to sell, but hopefully that makes sense. Facebook groups for the most part are my favorite. Let's see. Coach says, if someone wants to do your program but can't afford to pay all of it up front, do you have a payment plan for them? So our program is not terribly expensive. I'm not going to go on here and say the price, but it's not that expensive. And if you can't afford to do the whole thing and you don't have an extra, like at least $500 and $1,000 to actually spend on cards, if I were you, I wouldn't do it. If you don't have an extra, like I wouldn't join my program unless you have like an extra like $2,000 to $3,000 at least just laying around to actually spend in sports cards. If you don't have that, sports cards is not going to be your saving grace. I would get a better job or stop spending so much money and save more money. Like, I wouldn't want you, obviously, like, I love money more than the next person. I'd love for you to join my program, and you would learn a lot. But I don't really care for you to learn a lot about sports cards if you're not going to get a positive ROI on paying us, right? So I would not join until you have at least a few grand laying around to mess around with. And honestly, like, this is going down another rabbit hole here, but even if you make like $4,000 a month, you should be able to save. Like, people, I think Americans have such terrible spending habits and they use their credit cards way too much. Like, if you don't have like a few grand, and listen, this is not me trying to go on here and say you need to make $1 million to be worthy of something, but like, if you don't have an extra few grand laying around to mess around with, you have bad spending habits. And you need to fix those and live as cheap as humanly possible to get a bankroll, to invest in yourself, to make more money so you can live a better life, right? Because that's all we really care about. Like, people want to make more money, not to make more money, but to live a better life, right? To maybe go on some more vacations, help your family out, whatever it might be. So, Coach, to answer your question, I would not join, honestly, until you have a few grand. Not to, like, attack you or anything, but, I honestly just want what is best for you, and what is best for you is having a few grand to actually spend on cards so you can make a positive ROI a lot faster. Because, like, having $300 to spend, yeah, you can make money, but it would just take way too long, and it's just not what you're looking to do, I'm sure. So that's my answer to that. I would not join my program. There you go. Probably not the answer you were expecting, because all these internet people get this bad rap of like just selling anybody. So yeah. Oh, you said you're going to join, Coach. Well, honestly, Coach, I wouldn't join unless you have a few grand. So just keep that in mind. I just want what's best for you. Let's see. Next question. John says, you're right on my alley, John. I like this question. Should I hold CJ Stroud or sell him ASAP? This is not financial advice, but my personal opinion is to hold CJ Stroud. I think he's at its floor, and I think he's going to go up in value. I think the Texans are going to pick up some pieces, shore up the defense, be solid going into next year. And I think people are going to realize, wow, Texans have a real shot next year with Diggs, with Tank Dell's going to come back. Oh, he fucked up his knee pretty bad. I think he's going to come back next year, probably mid next year, and they're probably going to win the division. Like the Titans stink, the Jaguars stink, and Anthony Richardson can't barely complete a slant pass. So the Texans are kind of locked in to win the division next year. I think they just need to shore up the defense, and they had some unfortunate injuries this year. But I think the Texans are going to be a really solid play next year. And once again, I wouldn't hold these cards into the season because most guys just go down in value. It's how it works. But like going back to CJ Stroud, so like if we go to CJ Stroud, let's just pick a random card like CJ Stroud, Disco, Prism. Let's pick a random card here. So like this card, you could see, wow. So this card was like almost $300 and before the season, and now it's like 120, 130. And what you want to look for in the offseason is you want to look and wait for a card to level off. So I would probably wait in like this specific card. I would like wait a week or two to see what happens. And once you see some consistency in sales in the offseason, well, you could tell yourself, okay, well, like if he's fallen a lot and it's steadily consistent, the sales, there's probably not much of a reason for it to go down, and there's only hope it would go up. So CJ Stroud, I think, is a great person to buy cards in the next month, 2 months, 3 months, and get them graded because there's a lot of them to be graded. They're not terribly difficult to be graded, and I think he has a high chance of appreciating. So for those reasons, I think CJ Stroud is a really good buy. Selling it now, I probably wouldn't unless you need the money. I think he has a good chance of going up in value. The way I've made money in sports cards is basically buy the players that are in the toilet. And CJ Stroud is kind of in the toilet right now. The Texans underperformed this year, even though they did make it to Kansas City. And honestly, they put up a pretty good fight. And I lost a crap ton of money on that game because fucking Kai Farbarn or whatever his name is got his field goal blocked. Oh, my God, that was terrible. Did you guys? Oh, that was just awful. But to answer your question, CJ Stroud, I think has a good chance of going up in value here in the coming few months. So hopefully that answers your question, John. Other question, Jay, how would you go about selling older cards? Jordan, Nolan Ryan, Griffey, Joe Montana, Jerry Rice, Pistol Pete rookies, etc. 89 Fleer, and assorted other cards from the late 80s, early 90s. Would you send them off to get graded? I've got about 300 that I think are worth getting graded, but at $20 a card, that's a pretty large upfront investment. And they don't come back 9s or 10s. Well, Jay, you kind of half answered the question. So like grading older cards, all right? So grading older cards. So to answer your question, you need to make, okay, so like corners, edges, centering, surface. I have a million videos out there. Go watch them to determine what you think a card would grade. The problem with cards from the 80s and the 90s is that they're very flimsy and they get messed up very easily. Hence why grading one of them as a 10 is worth so much, because they're hard to grade as a 10 because a lot of them are damaged. So what I would do, this is like so you have said you have 300 cards that you think are worth getting graded. And you're right, it's $20 a card to get them graded. That's a lot of money. That's 20 times 300, 6,000. The simple question I would ask myself, I use something called the 2x rule, okay? So basically, I'll literally write this out for you so you cannot screw this up. If the card is worth at least $45 as I'm going to put this in red right here, so PSA 9. If it's worth at least $45 a PSA 9, then grade it. Okay, right? So you already have these cards, so the cost for you to buy them is nothing because you have them. And then you want to at least try to double your money. So after shipping and some fees, you're going to want each card to be worth at least $45 as a PSA 9. So I would only send in cards. Hopefully this makes sense what I'm about to say. But I would only send in cards that I think have a chance of grading a 10. Okay? But I would expect those cards to get a 9. Okay? If you could send in 100 cards to get graded to PSA, and you think they're a 10, and if 15 to 20% of them actually grade a 10, I would consider that a win. They're just really hard to grade. Also, PSA wants to keep the population report low. So that's what I would do with that stuff. Hopefully that answers your question, Mr. J. Let's see. Next one. James, can you make a profit by buying Mosaic Score at Walmart or Target? I spent $1,500 last month and got a few decent cards. So what you're doing, no. You cannot make any money. So if you go, a lot of the time with these products like Mosaic and Select that sell at Walmart and Target, you could, so like, I don't know if you guys have ever seen those YouTube videos, but you ever see those YouTube videos and you can find them all over the place. Like when a product release comes out and they put them on the shelves at Target or Walmart, there's a lot of the time there's a crazy rush to get them. I've even seen people get stomped in fights over buying these packs and boxes of cards because they're limited. And a lot of the times you can literally just buy it at Target, let's say a box for $50 of cards, and turn it around and sell it on eBay for $80. Is it worth getting into a fight over $30? Probably not. But you could literally go to your Walmart and pull up the eBay app and see what these packs and boxes sell for on eBay. And if they're cheaper at Walmart or Target, you can literally buy them and just resell the pack and box without opening it. You're opening up packs and boxes, so you're probably going to lose money in the long run. But if you don't open them and you just turn around and sell them, you can make a nice 15, 20% a lot of the time. And it might sound funny. It's like, why is it so easy to make money? In your local Walmart, people may not care about sports cards. And let's say you live in like the country in Arkansas where it's maybe less people, but they stock the Walmart just like they would of one in New York. Well, you might be able to buy them in Arkansas where you live and then go and sell them to someone in New York who doesn't have access to them and charge a premium for it. So a lot of the times you can make just a simple, clean profit just literally by going to Walmart and Target. Now, I don't teach it how to do that because, one, there's not much to teach, and two, it's not that scalable. Three, you got to get lucky, and four, you can't do it online, and you can't be remote because you obviously have to go to the Walmart or go to the Target. So hopefully that answers your question. Shane says, do Bowman first purple refractor autographs have value? Absolutely. And I think that is it for the questions. Now I have some notes of things to go over. So pretty, let's see. The Unworthy Artist says, missed my question on grading companies for starters in the grading world. So I'm not exactly sure what your question is, but the simple answer is you're just going to want to grade cards with PSA. Unless you're kind of broke, you can go to SGC. Those cards sell for less, like 20, 30% less, but they get back to you a lot faster. But I always tell people, if you're that broke where you need the money within a week or two, I probably wouldn't get started in sports cards to begin with. All right, on to some other things. I don't understand how people do this. Someone gave a bad review for us to Major League Profits who never purchased the program. He basically just said in the review, there's no way this could be real. This is a scam. I swear. And we got the review taken down. But how could you imagine like leaving a review on a restaurant saying this food sucks, but you never have been there or eaten it before? How could you do that? I don't know. Maybe one of you guys could enlighten me. Also, we had someone join the program. I'm not going to say his name out loud. But what's interesting, so what we do in Major League Profits is, right, so we have like a few different programs. In the highest level program, you get a one-on-one coach. And I actually train these coaches. I train them. We go over call recordings and stuff like that. And there was a student who was a bad apple. He basically joined the program. So he paid us money to join the program and then didn't buy any cards because he was skeptical of the idea of making money with cards, even though he purchased the program and he was in our community and saw how much success people were getting. But he was still skeptical on the idea of making money with sports cards. How you spend a lot of money, then you're skeptical and don't want to take action, I have no idea. I will never understand. I'd say like 5% of people will pay us money and literally do nothing. I swear. They'll literally pay us money and just not even watch a video. I don't understand that because even if I buy a $27 product, and I'm fortunate in the sense where $27 doesn't mean anything to me, I'm watching it right away and taking action right away. Like, boom, right away. And there's people that will pay us once in a while and just do nothing. I don't understand it. But this is one of those guys. And what I found interesting, so we were going over his onboarding calls. So this is somebody that joined our program maybe like 6-7 months ago. And we were going over his onboarding call. And there were just so many red flags. It was crazy. So this guy was saying things along the lines of, does this actually work? How do I know this is going to work for me? Just like super, super, super skeptical the whole entire time. And I was training my coach to get this person to not be skeptical, essentially, to put him on the right road. But we didn't do a good enough job, and because of it, he went down this road of essentially doing nothing. And then he got pissed off. He left a bad review. The review was bullshit. He was making stuff up, so he got it taken down on Trustpilot. But one, how do you buy something and not take action? And two, I find it fascinating that I've taught this. I've had thousands of people join the program right now, and it's so evident and obvious. You can tell when someone's going to be an all-star versus someone who might take a little bit longer. Like the all-stars, and I'm not saying this just to say it because like we sell a program, but the all-stars have no questions. They're not skeptical. They're super bought in. They pay us money, and then boom, they just get going right away and just are super almost like, this is a bad word to use, but like they have like dumb golden retriever puppy energy. They're just like, tell me what to do, and they're super trainable, and that's it. As opposed to some people coming with this massive amount of skepticism, and they need to like see it work. They need to start slow. They have 8 million questions on why something should be done, why, as opposed to a lot of the people who are stars just blindly just listen to us. And if you want to be coachable, just blindly listen to someone that's been there and done that. That's the best way to be coachable. And if it doesn't work for you, then you can make slight adjustments. Like if I was playing on a football team and I was a quarterback and I was a rookie and my coach was, Kyle Shanahan, I would just blindly listen to him because his football knowledge far surpasses mine. And with sports cards, I'm not saying I am a perfect person by any stretch of the imagination, but when it comes to making money with sports cards, I do know what I'm doing. And people that come into the program don't know what they're doing, so you should just blindly listen to me, right? Just blindly listen, do what I say. I promise it works, and you'll make money. But what's interesting is some people don't do that. Also, on top of that, so I'm pissed off that I could not post this testimonial. But we had somebody who is a fire chief, so he wouldn't let me record him talking about money because I don't know why. Maybe it was against the rules with his department or something. He made first 4 months in our program, he made a $40,000 profit in 4 months. I don't even know how the hell he did that because that's a lot of freaking money. But this guy absolutely crushed it. And once again, this was one of these guys that just was like, let's do it. I'm in. This sounds amazing. And he was super coachable, listened, took notes, got a good foundation, watched all the videos, and then boom, just took off and just ran with it. Now, that's not normal, making that much money, but I thought that's pretty cool. Also, next topic, back to some sports stuff. The only sports guy I really listened to kind of religiously is Colin Cowherd. He was on his podcast. He was talking about the NBA and how what's interesting is they signed a huge, I think 50 billion, I don't even know, some insane TV contract. And owners are making a lot of money, but the product on TV is getting worse and worse. I think viewership and ratings are going down and down. And a large part of this is because the regular season is meaningless. It's simply meaningless. Like, it's been proven in the NBA, you don't need home field advantage to win a championship. Like you saw in the NFL yesterday, the Bills beat the Ravens. Well, it's yesterday as I'm speaking. The Bills beat the Ravens, and it's safe to assume if the Bills were playing in Baltimore, they would not have won that game. And we saw, I think it was week 4, the Bills just got their doors blown off by the Ravens. So, like, home field advantage in the NFL means so much because of false start penalties, being able to call more audibles at the line of scrimmage, the momentum, all that stuff, right? But the NBA, it doesn't really mean anything. And on top of that, you could see it in the players. They don't give a shit. Like, no one plays defense. No one goes super hard. Like, hockey is 82 games, but it's a much different sport. Totally different sport. They're going 110% because they have to, because it's a physical sport as opposed to basketball. They don't. So, like, what would you do to make the regular season meaningful? Someone had the idea of making it March Madness style where it's one game. That's insane. I don't think you could do that. But how could you make the regular season of the NBA more meaningful? I don't know, just lowering how many games, but 82 games isn't a ton. Like, what are you going to do? Lower it to like 60? You could do that, but then owners wouldn't want to do that because that's just less ticket sales and less money and less opportunities for TVs or TV channels to run commercials, right? Because there's just less games going on. So it's an interesting dynamic. Like baseball, what they did to make it a little bit better is the pitch clock helped out so the games would go faster. But that's not the problem with the NBA. Someone had the idea of, this would be interesting. What if every single NBA team drew their own 3-point line? So the Warriors, maybe with Steph Curry, they make their 3-point line a little bit closer because they shoot a lot of threes. And maybe a team that sucks at shooting threes has no 3-point line. Would that be an interesting fix to the NBA? I don't know. It would make it interesting. It would make every single game a lot different and interesting. But what would you do to fix the NBA? I really don't know what I would do. That's one solution. The in-season tournament, I guess it still doesn't make regular season games worth a lot. And what would you do to make those 82 games more powerful? Getting rid of conferences? You can get rid of conferences and just make top 16 or top 12 straight up. Like, this is the order of the playoffs. So maybe that'll make things more interesting. I'm not sure. But it's something to think about. Also, on to the next topic. So I was at the Dallas Card Show. I only went there for the day. I flew in Thursday morning and flew out Thursday night. I was exhausted. That's 2.5 hour flight from Tampa. That's a long day. And I was at the Dallas Card Show, and honestly, I didn't buy much. I only ended up buying one card of Jordan Love. I sold like 6 or 7 cards, which was cool. And a lot of these guys were overpriced. I was looking to buy football, and I like the idea of buying Jordan Love, but a lot of these people had their prices like from what it was like 4 months ago, which is just not that anymore, right? It's like 25, 30% less. So, and the reason I didn't buy a lot of cards, I was like, well, there's some decent deals here, but I think I could just put my money in a better spot by buying. I just know there's better deals online, and I was going back and forth with people on eBay, so I was a little bit hesitant to buy things at the Dallas show. But people just had their prices just way too much. They did not adjust for like the offseason or like these players going down. So, and also there's a lot of at the Dallas show, there's a lot more higher end stuff, like weird, rare, like higher end stuff, like Randy Moss, Kaboom Green 101s, like stuff I usually didn't see it. I haven't been to a card show in a long time, a bigger card show, because I just don't have the time anymore. However, one thing I'll say that's happening in the sports card industry. So I had a bunch of my friends over this week. I do this thing where I throw a birthday party for my dog once a year, and it's just an excuse for all my friends from New Jersey to fly down to Florida. We all go out, drink, gamble. Great time, except for the fact that I lost a bunch of money. But other than that, it was fun. However, one of my friends, Dylan, works for Alt. Alt is a company that basically runs a lot of auctions, price cards. It's like a software. They got a bunch of startup money years ago. And Dylan prices cards because what Alt does is you could give them $30,000 in cards, and they'll actually give you a cash advance of about 60 to 70%. And Dylan prices and values these cards so they know how much to give as a cash advance. So Dylan is he's probably way more involved in the sports card hobby than me, okay? Because at this point in my life, I'm like running Major League Profits and making sure people are successful with that stuff, running a lot of marketing, content, all that stuff. And Dylan was telling me, he's like, higher end cards are making a big comeback. So let me show you an example of this. So check this out. This is an example. I actually sold 2 of these cards a few years ago, so this is gonna piss me off just looking at it. But so check this out, right? We have Victor Wembanyama, right? Victor Wembanyama is having a pretty good season, right? The Spurs aren't that great, but Wembanyama's having a good season. And if we look at, let's see here, Let's see if we can find Wembanyama, number to 49, Prism. Oh, Arn, I gotta type in his name. Wembanyama. Oh, why is this? Oh, I put in 2022. That's why. Let's see if we can find this card. I want to. Orange wave, orange. All right, bang. Check this out. This is interesting. So my screen's kind of small here. Yeah, it's kind of small. But so if we look before the season, right? Look at this blue line that's moving right here. Oof. So this card before the season was like $1,000, a silver prism PSA 10, and it's come down to about 700. So his silver prism is down, but check out his orange prism. So I actually bought this card. So if you look in the light blue right there, actually, you know what? Let me get rid of this. Right? I'm just gonna. There we go. That's better. So this is his orange prism PSA 10, and we just saw a silver prism PSA 10 went from like 1,000 to about 700. It's down. Call it 30%. Wembanyama, although I bought this card for around 9,000 or 10,000, I bought two of them, and I sold it for like 11 or 12. I actually made less money than I thought I was gonna. But look at this. Look at this. Right, the last one did 13, and one just did 15,000. So his silver prism's down 30%, but his orange prism, because it's a higher end card, is up 30%. Or is up 50%. Yeah, 50%. Just about $10,000 to $15,000. And Dylan was explaining this to me. He's like, this isn't the only example. Like these higher end cards like gold kabooms, green kabooms, 101, black prisms, like they're going up in value. Well, these others are going down in value. Now the reason being probably is because the silver prism PSA 10, for example, of Wembanyama, there's just more PSA 10s being put into the universe because there's more of them being graded. And if there's more of them in the universe, the supply goes up, which means the demand goes down, which means the price goes down. But like original colors, so when I say original colors, I'm talking about like, so check this out. So original colors, okay? So like blue, orange, you call it red, the black, 101, like these original colors, like and just a regular blue, not like an orange wave or an orange shimmer, or a blue choice or a blue wave, and like the original bold colors. These cards hold a lot of value and hold a lot of weight because collectors just prefer them because these were like the original cards from like the original variations of cards from like 10, 15 years ago. And these cards are just, seems like they're just all going up in value as long as the player's not playing like shit. So I think that's an interesting look at the hobby. Something I'm definitely going to think about as I keep buying cards. I have a few bigger cards up for auction right now that fall into this category. So that's good. Hopefully I'll make some good money. But that Wembanyama is an interesting example. Now, why that's happening, I don't know. It's just how the hobby works. It just goes in waves. Next up I have here, so what I think is interesting, so back to sports here. So I'm going to say something, and a lot of you fanboys are going to disagree with me. Lamar, I feel bad for Lamar Jackson, man. Generational talent, and Josh Allen. Generational talent, great quarterbacks. So if Lamar Jackson played 10, 20 years ago, he'd probably have some Super Bowls, but he's in the AFC, and in order to win in the AFC, like Josh Allen and Lamar have to go through each other and then go through Mahomes every single year. Going through Kansas City and Andy Reid, it's just hard. Like, you're just canceling each other out. Like, Tom Brady, every single year had a bye because the AFC East sucked, right? The Dolphins, Jets, and Bills were terrible. So he was like 13-3 every single year. He was home for 2 playoff games, and the first playoff game would be like Deshaun Watson and the Texans, or like some game where they'd be favored by 10 points. And then the next one would be either the Colts coming into New England, which is a terrible matchup every single time. The Colts never had a good defense, and Peyton Manning was not good in cold weather. And number 2, or like Big Ben and the Steelers, who ran that shitty zone defense against Brady, and they would just get destroyed every single time. So Brady almost had a free pass to the Super Bowl every time. As opposed to Lamar, I mean, you had a good year. Just going into Buffalo and trying to beat Josh Allen is a hard thing. And they were actually the better team, I thought. I had money on Buffalo. I got lucky. But they were the better team. And it's just hard to do that. You just got to... And then even if they won, okay, now you got to go to Kansas City. And even Josh Allen, I want the Bills to win. I think every single person wants the Bills to win. And I looked at the spread next week. So the Bills are underdogs by 1.5 points. And if it was like 3 points, I would take the Bills. But you even saw it with the Ravens game. The Bills' defense is okay. They get gashed by the run a little bit. They give up some big plays. They get some turnovers. But the problem is Mahomes probably isn't going to turn the ball over. The Chiefs have a good running game. And the Chiefs' defense is excellent. Like, excellent. So you have, like, 2 quarterbacks that are both amazing, right? Call them equal. They're both equally amazing. Maybe the Bills are a little bit more dynamic. Maybe they have some more playmakers, but Mahomes is a little bit better than Allen, so it cancels out. Also, the Chiefs are home, so, like, call their offense is equal, but then the Chiefs' defense is top in the league, and the Bills' defense is kind of hit or miss. So, like, I want the Bills to win, man. I do. I want to see Bills, Eagles, even Bills, Commanders. Nobody would stop each other. But how do you bet against the Chiefs when they're just simply the better team and they're home? I don't see how I just don't put a ton of money on this game and try to get all the money back I've lost from this year. I don't see it. And once this podcast comes out, it'll be before the game. We can look back at it and see if I'm right. But I just see the Chiefs, like the Bills are going to score. The Chiefs are going to score. But I see the Chiefs getting stops. I see there being no turnovers. And I just see the Bills punting more than the Chiefs. And that's it. And also the Chiefs are home. I don't see how the Bills win the game. They could. Obviously, anything could happen. Both QBs are great, but I just don't see it. But yeah, we'll see what happens. I talked about higher end cards making a comeback. Birthday party. So I kind of already touched upon this, and hopefully this comes back to me what I was going to talk about with that girl. But so every single year, I'll leave it off with this. Is I always like to talk about money and life and business and all that good stuff. So every single year, once a year, my dog's birthday is January 3rd. I try to throw a party for her, but it's just an excuse for all my friends to get together and go out, drink, gamble, etc. So I do believe, like, I've been fortunate. I've been able to grow this company. I've been financially fortunate. And I could use my money and go off and invest in myself, which I do all the time in buying education and skills. And I could go off and buy dumb shit. Love to be a guest in the show. We don't do guests at the moment, James, but I'll keep you in mind for the future. But I do believe in using money to elevate other people's lives. I think it's just the most fulfilling thing to do. It's the most fun thing to do. So I flew all my friends down from New Jersey to Tampa. Went on a boat. We have a golf cart. We drive around like an idiot through the city. Went out to eat good food. Went to the casino. Lost a bunch of money. For some reason, I could not win playing craps. I'm not like a great craps player. I know how the basics of the game work. And is this just me? Or like is craps an automatic way to lose money? It's crazy. Like it's just money just vanishes off the table unless someone gets like super hot with the dice. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. That's a whole conversation for a different day. But flew everyone down. I catered in tons of food Saturday night. Got a table at a club. Got a bunch of alcohol flowing. Bought a bunch of bottles of Tito's and all that stuff. And I don't go out that much anymore. It's hit or miss. When I do go out, I do tend to go all out, but I just don't go out as much. Great time. Just great time. Like my friends and I will probably talk about it for a long time until I do it again next year. And I'll probably keep doing it till everyone's married with kids. And maybe I'll still try to keep doing it. But I think it's an amazing way to use your money. So for those of you guys who are listening to this and you want that financial freedom or time freedom or whatever, obviously invest in yourself, get into sports cards, get going with another side income or full-time business. But then it's a great, like people say money doesn't buy happiness, man. That's just a fucking lie. People without money say that. I'm telling you for a fact, money does buy happiness once you have the right relationships in your life. It just simply allows you to do things that you wouldn't be able to do without money. Like this weekend, it cost me like maybe $5,000, maybe $6,000, which is a lot of money. I'm not stupid. I didn't grow up with money. I know that's a fuck ton of money. But I'm fortunate through sports cards and through Major League Profits, I don't even blink when I spend it. And that is happiness. So like anyone that says money doesn't buy happiness, like money doesn't fix relationships in your life and it turns people sideways and turns people into shitty people 100%. But as long as it doesn't do that to you and you have the right relationships in your life, I'm telling you, man, money does fucking buy happiness. Don't let anyone ever tell you otherwise. It does. Like taking your family on a vacation to Hawaii, that costs a lot of money and that equates to happiness. My opinion. Call me crazy, call me greedy, But that's all I got for you. That was a good one. Wow. Yeah, got a lot of good stuff. That was a little bit less sports cards, a little bit more about life. But any questions about sports cards, life, business, whatever, drop in the comments below. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this. I try to do this once every single week and release it on YouTube every single Monday. And I try to reply to the comments on Instagram or my YouTube and answer them in this podcast, even though this one I didn't because there were already a bunch of questions because we send out an email also every week to a forum where people could submit a question. But hopefully you enjoyed this stuff. Like, comment, subscribe. Thank you so much for listening. I'll see you in the next one.